Well, guys, it seems to me like we all knew that this right here would eventually get going.
State legislators have introduced a bill calling for a speed up of the recall process. Can you tell us what you make of that, and if you think projects like this one speak to anything about your relationship with Springfield, with Washington, and the ability to carry forward?
Well, look, as far as, people introducing legislation, that's their job to do that. I remember when I first started working for State Senator Don Harmon, there was a piece of legislation to declare popcorn to be the state
to recall Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. The first attempt, you may remember, came from a Chicago resident, an average citizen. But this next one comes from Springfield. NBC5's Chela Vachahusky got the mayor's reaction to this today.
As he joined a cavalcade of public officials welcoming a $1.9 billion federal investment in the CTA's Red Line extension, Mayor Brandon Johnson brushed off what have been increasing calls for him to be recalled.
As far as, people introducing legislation, that's their job to do that.
Late Thursday night, Representatives Anthony DeLuca and LaShawn Ford introduced HB 1084, calling for a clear and effective process to conduct recall elections in cities like Chicago.
Well, I did say a while back that the people of Chicago would eventually get to the point to where they're like, I've just outright had enough of this guy. However, it doesn't seem to me like it's just the people in the city of Chicago. It's actually the governor of the state, too, as I will explain in this video. Now, guys, obviously I let that little montage play a little bit longer than normal for opening montages, but I have a feeling that it's not just the 56,000 signatures that have been amassed to get Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson out or recall him. I have a feeling it's something else as we'll be discussing in this video here. However, two very, very quick things. Number one, make sure you guys please hit the like button for the algorithm. Also, something else too, make sure you guys cut the notifications on for the channel. Make sure you guys also follow me on Facebook. This is what the page looks like. I'll link a post in the description box, probably one of the previous videos that I did from, and of course, obviously what I mean by from is from Facebook because I put it on Facebook. And you guys could also follow me on X as well. I'll also be linking a pinned tweet in the description box. Make sure you guys follow me there. But thing number two that I want to discuss. Now, guys, I've been talking about the city of Chicago, New York a lot the past year and a half, especially with the migrant crisis. And let me just go ahead and say before we go any further that I think that is what really got this started, as I will remind you.
Homeowners are angry.
Protect black housing in Chicago.
They believe the city has overextended itself and should be putting the tens of millions of dollars earmarked for migrants into Chicago's most vulnerable neighborhoods.
But the South Side has been under-resourced, underfunded for years, for decades. We have schools that need to be reopened. We have buildings that are abandoned that need to be business operated.
The group says the city has abandoned its Invest Southwest initiative, a Lightfoot-era program that was dedicated to reversing decades of disinvestment on Chicago's South and West sides, promising to align more than $2.2 billion through public and private funding.
We are taxpayers, we're property owners. Our money should go towards fixing our communities.
The city has received more than 15,000 migrants since August 2022.
We have no more room. Y'all are embarrassing Chicago as a whole.
But there's also this bit with Walgreens, which, of course, to go on top of that they also had a recent flare-up in San Francisco, the Fillmore district, because Walgreens is leaving there, too. Seems to be like a lot of brick-and-mortar stores, even with Trump coming in, are saying, no. We can't stay here any longer. We can't deal with the crime. But that second thing that I wanted to discuss before we really went into this was this here. If you are a New Yorker, and if you are a Chicagoan, or if you're in the state of Illinois or the state of New York, please comment because I'm pretty sure you guys can kind of relate to this. I got a friend of mine, and it does relate to this topic. I got a friend of mine in New York. Not going to give away any names, not going to give away his location, but I've had a lot of conversation with him over the years about New York State. And of course, we talked about things from a few years ago, and this is back in 2022. I think it was the last time we had a conversation about this. And I asked him, I said, look, man, is it really and truly that bad? And he told me, he said, look, dude, let me go ahead and say this. If you get a ticket in New York and you show up to court on time, they give you free Mets tickets. I was like, wow. Then he would later on tell me in conversation that at the time, Governor Andrew Cuomo and then New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio absolutely hated each other. Now they're the same party, but they absolutely hate each other. It seems to me that while not as open, it just feels to me like Governor J.B. Pritzker and Mayor Brandon Johnson don't like each other. But what has led to this recall? What's going on right now? Well, let me play the rest of the news report that you guys saw at the very beginning, and then we'll get the ball rolling on this video.
It's not something that I thought of myself. It's something that constituents asked for in 2015 after the Laquan McDonald's tape was released.
At the time, Ford's bill, which he has introduced every year since, was aimed at Mayor Rahm Emanuel. There is already a grassroots effort underway to collect the more than 56,000 signatures necessary to force a recall. The man behind that movement is Dan Bolin.
Every day that the mayor is in office is a master class in why a Chicago mayoral recall mechanism is needed.
The mayor's office is still reeling after questions were raised about his status as an on-leave member of the Chicago Teachers Union and his involvement in contract talks, as well as criticism from the governor's office about his relationship with Springfield.
The good thing about the work that we do in the city of Chicago, a perception of one individual doesn't define the entire city of Chicago. I will say this, though, the city of Chicago has gotten better, stronger.
Okay, now you guys obviously seen that. You guys obviously heard that. And you guys know me. I'm not going to go too much to the commentary or give you guys too much of the details on said situation. But you guys obviously know that this situation in Chicago has been going on for a while. However, there is something that does need to be said as I'm rolling the rest of something I posted earlier in the B-roll footage, and that is, I think that Mayor Brandon Johnson is, how do I say this, not aware of what's happening to him. And I got to tell you right now that somebody who's a true believer like himself, somebody who took the side of the rioters, the looters, and the flash riots, the guy who said that they were just hungry, the guy who seems to take the side of the criminal over the cop, the guy who's been trying to defund the city of Chicago's police department and fire department and sanitation department, the same guy who's also been very open to these migrants. He's basically put the migrants ahead of the black population that lives in South Chicago, southwestern Chicago. It seems to me like this guy is just not aware of what's going on. Also, not to mention the fact that he was having panic attacks during times of stress. And, of course, there's also this property tax dust-up, which I've talked about before. The fact is the city of Chicago is, for the most part, chaotic. And it seems to me like it's a blight on a certain governor, the governor of the state of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, who... well, you guys can make whatever you guys want of him, but this is a guy who plans on running for president in 2028. And I think that this recall effort is actually more or less spurned by him, as I'll explain in this video. But before I talk about that, let me give you another example of how bad Chicago's getting. I talked earlier about Walgreens. I talked earlier about San Francisco, the Fillmore District, and of course, Walgreens leaving there. Well, let me play the news clip, the news report of some of the stuff you guys saw in the B-roll footage. Let me go ahead and just play that for you.
Walgreens locations will be closing down.
It's a bad issue. It's bad. We need Walgreens. We need it because our medicine, we're seniors.
The second largest pharmacy store chain in the U.S. announced it's closing 5 stores by the end of February in neighborhoods on the city's south and west sides.
Walgreens they still trying to make their money, but they don't want to do it in the black and brown community.
And
I had to stop really quick so that way you guys can know that this right here will become a narrative, and I'm pretty sure you know what narrative it is, but let me play the rest of it.
An emailed statement, a spokesperson for Walgreens says the most recent closures are a part of a previously announced business strategy calling for the shuttering of 1,200 locations over 3 years, adding in part, increased regulatory and reimbursement pressures are weighing on our ability to cover the costs associated with rent, staffing, and supply needs. It's never an easy decision to close a store.
Is disappearing.
While at an unrelated event advocating for affordable housing for seniors, community activist Reverend Robin Hood says the closures will be a devastating blow for those already struggling to get their medications.
And Walgreens is wrong for coming in this community all these years and then closing it up.
After seeing several drugstores close in recent years, Del Car drugstore owner Edwin Muldrow, whose father opened in 1960 what is now the only black-owned drugstore left in Chicago, says when corporate pharmacy chains abandon communities, they leave behind pharmacy deserts.
So when you take the prescription services out of the community, where are the seniors going to go and purchase food, purchase basic
Shame
health.
on Walgreens for leaving. Shame on Walgreens for leaving a city that has very high crime rates. Now, guys, I mentioned that there was a certain narrative, and that narrative, I'm pretty sure you guys have already figured out what this guy was saying, is probably going to come about here soon. They don't want to deal with people of color. Well, I'm here to tell you guys right now that that's not the reason why Walgreens is leaving. And I've heard some people say that other competitors, like, say, Amazon and many of the drug companies are putting Walgreens out to pasture, or they're making sure that Walgreens can't compete in the city of Chicago, but that's not the case. The insurance always goes up much, much higher. The crime is ridiculous. You've got employees who are in fear of their life of what could happen in these areas. Not only are they employees, but they're also young employees, meaning that they're working this as a part-time job, probably collecting how do I say, a little bit extra, because jobs are just not as available right now, especially given the fact that they gave a lot of these jobs to these migrants that Brandon Johnson very, very well took in with open arms. And also, to go on top of that, all the other budget concerns, you guys can obviously see where this is going here. There's not really many opportunities left in the city of Chicago. And then to go on top of that, the crime is obviously the driving factor why it is that Walgreens is getting the hell out of there. It's not just the city of Chicago, it's also the state of Illinois. You see, the longer that Brandon Johnson remains the mayor of Chicago, the more likely it is that businesses could in fact leave not only Chicago, but the state of Illinois itself. Most of the population in the state of Illinois is not just located in the city of Chicago. It's also located in the surrounding suburbs, and they're infested with crime as well. Naperville, Joliet, areas like that, they're Des Plaines. Yes, I'm pretty sure you guys can kind of see that what's going on in Chicago is affecting the rest of the state. And seeing how it is that Chicago at one point in time was a pretty high tourist destination, it seems to me like tourism, which of course is not the chief economic motivator or the economic moneymaker in the state of Illinois, it definitely helps to have that extra tourism cash. Still at the same time, though, why in the world would the governor of Chicago, why in the world would J.B. Pritzker be okay with this recall effort? Why would he not be fighting back against it? Why would he not be giving some form of, some form of push or some form of confidence for Brandon Johnson? Well, let us go ahead and get to that.
Growing between Governor Pritzker and Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson.
It's because the mayor helped defeat a bill pushed by the governor that would have regulated hemp products like Delta 8 weed.
Political reporter Per Schutz went one-on-one with the mayor today. One of the many things you spoke to him about, right?
We did. We had a wide-ranging one-on-one, but earlier the governor vented, saying he was blindsided by Mayor Johnson, who in the 11th hour asked lawmakers to vote against this bill to regulate hemp products like Delta 8. Pritzker says his phone line is open, but the mayor rarely chooses to call.
Lines of communications are open, but people have to take advantage of the open communication line, and often that didn't happen with regard to the hemp bill. Didn't call anybody in my administration.
That bit about Brandon Johnson not contacting the governor's office, trust me, that will come up a little bit later on in the video. But let me stay on track before I completely go off the rails. You guys know me. I can go in a million different directions. I mean, just like that. Now, guys, this bit about Delta 8, I'm going to link some stuff in the description box for you guys. But obviously, Brandon Johnson has chose to assert himself in this discussion. Now, guys, you may be thinking about what you guys just saw, and you might be thinking, oh, this right here is nothing. It's a meaningless squabble. These two have actually gone at it before. They've actually gone at it before over these types of issues, philosophical issues, and then also to go on top of that, there's also situations where J.B. Pritzker walks back into his office and says, daggone, Brandon, you really and truly are not making matters any easier for me. I mean, the crime is ridiculous. You're not doing anything about it. You're not even using the budget that's been set aside for the city of Chicago. You're not using it for the betterment of the city. It's taking me down with you. So while it's possible, more than likely, that J.B. Pritzker is not rooting on Brandon Johnson to be recalled, it does seem to me like what's going on here is another opportunity for him to distance himself away from Brandon Johnson. Now, guys, really quick, I'm going to play this next bit. And the reason why I'm playing this next bit, and I'm going to let the rest of this ride, because you guys know how I structure these videos, is because I want you guys to pay very, very close attention to how Brandon Johnson reacts in his interview with Fox, local Fox News, Illinois, Chicago. I want you to pay attention to this. And I'm pretty sure that what you just heard from J.B. Pritzker would have been brought up in this interview. Even though it's a small, short bit, I'm pretty sure it would have been brought up. But pay very close attention to how aloof Brandon Johnson is during this entire discussion.
Look, sometimes within family, we come to slightly different conclusions, but we're all moving towards the same goal, which is to keep people safe, but also to make sure that there's a real voice from everyone when it comes to legislation or any other idea.
But Pritzker says it's a pattern. For all of Johnson's asks from Springfield, like more money for...
You can talk about it being a family all you want, but it seems to me like what's going on here is that you're being thrown under the bus. Of course, he's so much of a true believer that he doesn't believe that that's the case. But let's watch some more of this news report.
Public schools or progressive revenue for the budget. Pritzker has only heard from Johnson 5 times in 2 years.
And with regard to his budget, literally the last call that we got from them was in September. And then once in December, we by the way, scheduled calls. And then they didn't show up.
Why pick this fight with the governor who you need on your side, Chicago needs, for added school funding and for progressive revenue?
We're all on the same team, right? No one's picking a fight with anyone. We're going to work with the 104th General Assembly. Our team is going to work with the governor's team, the Speaker of the House, the Senate President, and all of the Chicago delegation who stood up in this moment as well and made sure that their voices were.
It doesn't seem to me like you guys are on the same team or you guys are even a family, but let's finish.
Pritzker also directed his ire at another ally, House Speaker Emanuel Chris Welch, who he says refused to call the hemp bill for a vote and allowed lawmakers to berate the governor's staff members.
There was a raucous meeting of the Democratic House caucus in which there was a lot of yelling at staff by people who were opposed to the bill that the speaker did not intervene about. And you shouldn't let staff get berated like that. You just shouldn't.
Now, guys, that last bit there from J.B. Pritzker seems to me like might have been a little bit made up. He said during the Fox News bit that the mayor of the city had only called him twice in like the past 5 or 6 months. 5 months. That seems to me, and given the fact that Brandon Johnson didn't really refute that, and you know good and well that that would have come up in the interview, especially given the fact that it's Fox, it seems to me like Brandon Johnson is absolutely clueless and has no idea what the governor's trying to do. So obviously the situation is divided. So let me just go ahead and throw this out here to kind of put a bow on this video. The city of Chicago, as many of you guys know, it's the city where Greg Abbott has sent many migrants to, in which, of course, the governor of the state of Illinois and the mayor of Chicago, they're both open to bringing these migrants in. And, of course, the budget has been stretched thin. Go back to what the lady was saying at the very, very beginning. It looks embarrassing. The city police department is stretched completely thin. Firefighters are stretched thin. Sanitation is stretched thin. These people are holding on by a thread. To go on top of that, you've got crime, and then, of course, you've got Walgreens leaving, medications, the elderly, old people are upset about that. Obviously, minority communities are upset about that. The entire situation is a great big giant morass, of which, by the way, Brandon Johnson is obviously ill-equipped to handle. But you're probably asking yourself a question. Why did this right here not happen with Lori Lightfoot? Well, Lori Lightfoot only lasted 1 term. Brandon Johnson, of course, is somebody who I personally believe could, in fact, get recalled and then yet somehow to survive. Remember, Brandon Johnson won by only 3 points, and that might make him right for being recalled and gotten rid of, but the point is this right here. He won by 3 points, meaning that there is the possibility that people could, in fact, say, oh, it's a guarantee that he is gone, and yet somehow or another the man manages to survive. However, if he gets recalled at this moment in time, that they're being recalled in the year 2025, and if he somehow or another survives, that also means that he would have to go through a re-election process in 2027. I don't think Brandon Johnson has enough devil's magic to get him through both elections. But still, at the same time, it would not surprise me if some dark money was sent to the recall effort. Remember, the city of Chicago, and by the way, there's a video that was recently released by Real American Politics, and I'll link it in the description box, roughly 15 minutes in, where they talk about the actual breakdown, the full official numbers from the election this past year. And of course, you see exactly how far Chicago shifted as far as each community is concerned, each precinct, and it was actually pretty jarring if you're a Democrat in Chicago. Yes, I know that Illinois is a very, very blue state. I know that Chicago makes up a good portion of the vote. It's heavily Democratic, but the results, let's just say that this type of stuff has a tendency to spread like a yeast infection. It has a tendency to spread like a wildfire, like the one in California. It spreads kind of fast. It's contagious. Not exactly a good sign for Democrats going in the future. And, of course, it starts with the mayor of Chicago because, of course, when most people think about the state of Illinois, they think about the city of Chicago. And like I said before, you've got this extremely fat governor who has got no chance at the presidency, but is going to run for president in 2028. He's going to try to tell you how good his record is, even though everybody in the whole country, everybody in the whole world, outside the left of the left and the mainstream media, doesn't seem to understand that Chicago is obviously pulling that state down much, much further. And, of course, the governor is allowing to happen. But, of course, like I said, the governor is going to try to convince us that Illinois is in great shape when obviously it's not. So, yeah, I think that this recall effort is getting a push, whether it be intentional, non-intentional, or how do I like to say, he's supporting the effort with his silence. That right there being the governor, J.B. Pritzker, on the removal of Mayor Brandon Johnson. But don't be fooled, because after Brandon Johnson is recalled, trust me, the gaslighting is probably going to intensify way worse coming from this governor, J.B. Pritzker, who I'm pretty sure many people from Illinois will come in here and comment on this video and talk about how bad he is. But you guys tell me what you think in the comments. I would love to hear what you guys have got to say. Guys, I'm probably going to move the OF video, the video on OF being predatory, I'm probably going to move that to Saturday, and then the redemption video to Sunday, and the video that I have planned on Superman and what's going to happen with Hollywood going forward for the trailer is probably going to move to the weekend. There's another video that I want to put out tomorrow. It's probably the Bill Burr, Jimmy Kimmel situation, so make sure you guys stick around for that video as well, because we got to talk about this potential recall effort in Los Angeles as well. So make sure you guys stick around for both videos. With that right there being said, please hit the like button, subscribe, share the video, sign off in the comments, and I'll see you guys later.